My name is Ethan Collins. I am 35 years old and I am a marketing manager for a medium-sized company. My wife Claire and I have been married for 7 years. From an outsider's point of view, we are an enviable middle-class couple with a successful career and a happy family. But only we know that for some time now, there have been some subtle cracks in the relationship between Claire and me. When I dragged my tired body into the kitchen that morning, Claire was busy at the kitchen counter. Her back was to me, her long blonde hair tied casually at the back of her head, her slender figure softly silhouetted by the morning light. I hugged her gently from behind. "Good morning, darling." "Good morning, Ethan," Claire responded without looking back. Her tone as flat as a cup of black coffee without sugar. She turned quickly and placed a plate of fried eggs and bacon in front of me. "Your breakfast? I'm off to work. See you tonight." With that, she hurriedly picked up her bag and left. I watched Claire's back disappear in the doorway and thoughtfully picked up a piece of omelet and brought it to my mouth, but I found it tasteless. Once upon a time, Claire would have snuggled in my arms for a while longer. We would have talked about last night's dreams, envisioned the future, and shared a cozy breakfast. But now, she seemed to avoid my gaze and touch, and dismissed my greetings. This subtle detachment had been going on for some time, but I couldn't tell what was wrong. I'm not trying to find Claire to talk about, but every time the words to the mouth and then she sidetracked the topic. Maybe it's because she's been too busy with work lately, maybe it's the 7-year itch, maybe. I console myself, give each other some time and space may be a good choice. After all, I believe that as long as we work together, what problems can be solved? Packing up the dishes, I drove to the office. In the office, I was as engaged in my work as ever. As a marketing manager, my schedule is always full. Negotiate with customers, develop marketing strategies, follow up the progress of the project. Busy so that I temporarily forget the hidden worries of family life. It wasn't until the evening, when I returned home with a tired body and mind, that I realized Claire's car wasn't in the garage. This was the third time this week that she had been late. I pulled out my cell phone and, after a moment's hesitation, sent a message to Claire. "Honey, I'm home already. What time will you be back? Do you want me to pick you up?" After sending the message, I paced around the living room in boredom, glancing at the cell phone screen from time to time, but I didn't receive a reply from Claire until I finished washing up and was ready to go to bed. Looking at the empty pillow beside me, an inexplicable sense of loss gripped me. On the nightstand, the wedding photo of Claire and I was smiling at me. In the photo, Claire was wearing a white wedding dress, full of happy smiles, holding my arm tightly. How sweet we were then. Now, I don't even know where she is, what she's doing, and when she's coming home. As I tossed and turned, I suddenly heard the garage door open downstairs, and I glanced at the electronic clock above my bed. I glanced at the electronic clock on my bedside, and it was 1:20 a.m. Claire came into the bedroom gingerly, as if she thought I was already asleep. In the faint moonlight, I noticed that her makeup was slightly smudged and her hair was a bit disheveled. "Where have you been? I messaged you," I asked in a low voice. Claire obviously didn't realize I was still awake. She flustered her hair and said in a relaxed manner, "Oh, the project is in a bit of a hurry, so my colleagues and I have been working overtime until now. Sorry, I didn't look at my cell phone. 3 days in a row this late?" A hint of displeasure escaped my tone. "Ethan, it's what we do." Claire sighed and quickly got under the covers. "It's getting late. Let's get some sleep and talk tomorrow." I wanted to say more, but Claire had already turned her back on me and closed her eyes. The room was silent again, with only the sound of her steady breathing. I stared at the ceiling, and countless images flashed through my mind. The way she joked with her coworkers when she was working late, the way she avoided looking at me, the way she gave me vague explanations. A terrible thought began to take root in my mind, but I desperately wanted to cut it off. No, I couldn't doubt Claire like that. She was just too busy, that's all. I said it a few times in my mind and closed my eyes, trying to fall asleep. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of my cell phone ringing. Subconsciously, I reached out to my side, but only touched a piece of cold sheet. Claire was already up. I moved my stiff neck, picked up my cell phone to check the time, but inadvertently glanced at the date on the screen. June 11th. A thought crossed my mind like lightning. How could I forget that today is our wedding anniversary? I scolded myself for my slowness and hurriedly got up to wash up, intending to give Claire a surprise. I walked into the kitchen where Claire was busy preparing breakfast. She heard my footsteps and without looking up said, "Good morning, coffee's in the pot." I walked up behind her, gently wrapped my arms around her waist from behind, and whispered in her ear, "Darling, guess what day it is?" Claire's body visibly stiffened. She slowly turned her head and looked at me quizzically. "What day?" "I don't remember anything special." My heart sank hard. She didn't really forget our anniversary, did she? Today is June 11th, our anniversary, remember? Ah, righto. Claire nodded her head as if she suddenly realized, showing an apologetic smile. "Sorry, I've been so busy lately, I forgot." I tried to hide my inner loss and squeezed out a relieved smile. "It's okay, I understand. Why don't we go out for dinner tonight and celebrate?" "Tonight?" Claire hesitated. "I'm afraid I'm not available. The company has a big project recently, so I may have to work overtime again. Can we celebrate some other time?" My smile was completely frozen on my face. Overtime, again. I've heard this excuse from Claire countless times. Is she trying to avoid me? I clenched my fists, forced down my displeasure, and said in a relaxed manner, "Okay, then we'll celebrate some other time. You've been working too hard lately. Take care of your health." Claire seemed relieved, smiled at me gratefully, finished her coffee quickly, picked up her bag and hurried out the door. Looking at her back, I had a mixed feeling in my heart. Once upon a time, how much we valued our wedding anniversary. Every year at this time, no matter how busy, we will be ahead of schedule work, enjoy the romantic time belonging to each other. But now, Claire can't even turn a blind eye to this special day. What happened to our relationship? All day long, my mood was shrouded in gloom. I was so distracted at work that I almost lost face at an important client meeting. After work, I uncharacteristically didn't go straight home, but parked my car in a neighborhood near Claire's office. I couldn't tell you what I was expecting or worrying about, but I just sat quietly in the car, staring at the front door of the office. It was nearly 9 o'clock when I saw Claire walk out of the office building. I was about to start the car when I realized that she was accompanied by a man. They were walking side by side, talking and laughing, and seemed very close. I couldn't quite see the man's face under the dim streetlight, but I thought he looked familiar, and Claire suddenly took the man's arm gently, whispered something in his ear, and the two of them laughed together. I felt like my heart had been pinched hard. A sour feeling quickly spread to all my limbs. No, this can't be happening. How could Claire have done such a thing? I didn't want to believe my eyes, but deep inside, a voice said coldly, "How long will you lie to yourself?" Claire and the man walked away talking and laughing. I sat still in the car, my mind blank. A tear unknowingly crossed my face, hit my suit pants, fainted a small water stain. How ironic, on this day that should be sweet, I am sitting in front of my wife's company, silently suffering the pain of betrayal. I have to do something. I cannot go on like this. But where do I begin? Do I have enough evidence to prove my wife's allegations of infidelity? What if it was all just a misunderstanding on my part? Tears blurred my vision. Claire's figure and the man gradually overlapped. I think back to the past little by little. When we first met, the heart pounding, the proposal of the mixed feelings, the wedding tears of joy. The beauty of love is only the tip of the iceberg. Under the calm sea, who can really see the whole picture of a relationship? I started the car and slowly drove away from the street. Messy thoughts lingered in my mind, and I couldn't calm down for a long time. I do not know, at this moment back home, will face a Claire how, I do not know. Our feelings, there is no possibility of salvage. All this can only be left to fate. Ever since I saw Claire with that man that night, I've been in a great deal of pain. I began to observe Claire's every move, trying to find clues, but I was afraid of what I might find. The atmosphere between us became more and more awkward and depressing, and Claire seemed to realize that I was different, but always avoided talking about it, as if she could cover it up. I knew this wasn't going to work, and we needed to have an honest conversation. That day after dinner, I worked up the courage to speak up while Claire was clearing the table. "Honey, let's talk?" "About what?" Claire's hand paused. her tone a little unnatural. Have you had something on your mind lately? I feel like you've changed a lot. I asked tentatively. It's nothing. I'm probably just tired. Claire lowered her eyes and focused on wiping a plate. I took a deep breath and decided to go straight to the point. The other night, I saw you with a man in front of your office. You look. The relationship is not general. You followed me? Claire snapped her head up, her eyes full of surprise and anger. I'm not stalking you. I'm just worried about you. I explained. But don't change the subject. Who is that man? What's your relationship? He's just a colleague of mine. Nothing special. Claire looked away, her tone cold. Ethan, I don't know what you suspect, but I don't like it when you question me like this. If it's really nothing, why are you afraid to look me in the eye? My tone rose involuntarily. Claire, I'm your husband, and I have a right to know the truth. If you care one iota about our marriage, be honest with me. There was silence for a while, and Claire finally turned to me and looked me straight in the eye. There was anger, helplessness, and a hint of imperceptible sadness in her gaze. Ethan, you want to know the truth? Okay, I'll tell you. That man's name is David, the new creative director of the company. We've been working on a lot of projects together lately, and yes, we get along. But that's it. We don't have a relationship that crosses any boundaries. So you admit that you have a crush on him? My heart sank. I didn't say that. Claire sighed. Ethan, the problem isn't David. The problem is us. How long has it been since you really cared about my feelings? You've always put your work first and ignored my needs. I feel like we're drifting apart as we communicate less and less with each other. Maybe I just need someone who can listen to me and understand me. Claire's words hit me like a hammer. I was speechless for a moment, and countless images flashed through my mind. Weekends missed because of overtime, anniversaries spent alone, appointments I had postponed over and over again. It's not that I didn't realize that there were problems between us, but I always thought that it was just a normal part of marriage, and I always thought that we had plenty of time to adjust slowly. It never occurred to me that what I was neglecting was exactly what Claire needed most. I'm sorry. I spoke with difficulty, my voice catching in my throat. I didn't realize you were so unhappy. Maybe. Claire, I love you and I want to work things out with you. Give me a chance, okay? Claire's eyes reddened and she nodded softly. I love you too. Ethan and I wish we could be as good as we used to be. It's just that. She paused and said, as if determined, I think I need some time and space to clear my head. Maybe we both need to calm down. I felt a choking twinge. I knew what it meant, separation. The word was too heavy for me to even say. But I also realized that I had no right to force Claire to stay. We both needed time to reflect on the marriage, to look inside ourselves. I respect your choice, I said, dumbly, but promise me you won't do anything you'll regret, okay? Claire didn't answer, but hugged me tightly and buried her face in my chest. Her tears soaked my shirt, and we embraced each other in silence, as if we wanted to embed each other in our bones and blood. After a long time, Claire let go of me and turned to go into the bedroom. Shortly after, she came out dragging a suitcase. I'm sorry. Claire took one last look at me, her eyes full of apologies and reluctance. I'll think it over. Please, take care of yourself. The moment the door closed, I could no longer control, paralyzed on the floor, let the tears flow freely. Our marriage, so come to an end? I looked around in a daze, familiar home, but now only I am left alone. My heart was hollowed out and cold. I picked up my cell phone and subconsciously tried to call my mom. I needed someone to talk to, someone to support me, but my dialing finger stopped in midair. No, I can't rely on others anymore. It's time to learn to be independent and find answers to my problems. Mom's words rang in my ears again. Honey, marriage is never easy. It requires management, dedication, and continuous learning and growth. Believe in yourself and in love. I clenched my fists. Yes, we may have lost our way, but love never goes away. I'm going to prove to you that I can change, and I'm going to take the time to repair this rift. Wait for me, Claire. I'm going to win your heart back. After Claire moved out, my life became a mess. When I woke up in the morning, The empty bed beside me was a constant reminder of our separation. When I came home from work, only my sighs echoed in the cold room. I began to think back over and over again on our meeting, falling in love and getting married, trying to find out what went wrong. The past flashed in front of my eyes. At the medical school graduation ball, Claire wore a red dress and smiled shyly at me in the crowd. In the difficult years after graduation, we were together and warmed each other with love. At the wedding ceremony, we made a promise to love and cherish each other, in sickness and in health, whether we are poor or rich. At that time, I never thought that one day we would come to this point. Perhaps it is those long-lasting happiness blinded my eyes so that I forgot to cherish the person in front of me. The pressure of work, the triviality of life, unknowingly diluted the love. We began to take each other for granted, began to lose patience in communication, began to fight over trivial matters. I always thought that this is how marriage should be, and that we should just get by with the bumps and bruises. However, I never imagined that it was this kind of compromise that made Claire more and more disappointed and confused. I picked up my cell phone countless times, wanting to call Claire, but I didn't know what to say. I was afraid that she had already made up her mind to leave, and I was even more afraid that my weakness would make her even more disappointed. I was drowsy all day, and alcohol became my escape from reality. A few times, my colleagues had to send me home, but I can't remember how I got drunk. After a week of this, I finally made up my mind that I couldn't go on like this. I took a week's vacation from work and began to seriously reflect on my problems in this marriage. I read countless psychology books, searched the internet for advice on how to save my marriage, and even confided in a marriage counselor. Gradually, I realized that what I needed to change was not only my attitude towards Claire, but also myself. I began to learn to think differently, to understand Claire's feelings. She wanted to be noticed, listened to, and cared for. But I was always busy with my work and neglected her needs. I began to take the initiative to contact Claire, care about her life, and listen to her worries. At first, Claire was a little wary, but gradually her tone softened. I started courting Claire again, just like when we were in love. I waited for her downstairs at her office and drove her home. I wrote her love letters, telling her my heartfelt regrets. I cooked for her, making her favorite dishes. Claire was touched by my changes. Once, with red eyes, she said to me, "Ethan, I'm so afraid that all this is just an impulse. I'm not sure you can keep going." I took Claire's hand and looked into her eyes. "Honey, believe me, it wasn't an impulse. I've really thought a lot about this in the meantime. I know we've both made mistakes, but I'm willing to change and spend the rest of my life making amends. Give me a chance. Let me prove it to you. Okay?" Claire burst into tears and hugged me tightly. At that moment, I knew she was shaken. We started trying to date again, just like a couple in love. We went to the movies, had picnics in the park, and watched the sunrise on the beach. In the process, we not only regained the sweetness of love, but also learned how to better communicate and understand each other. But I knew in my heart that fixing a marriage wasn't going to happen overnight, and Claire was still in touch with the man named David, even though she insisted they were just friends. Every time I saw David's name pop up on Claire's cell phone, I felt a pang of sadness. Jealousy and anxiety gnawed at me, and I tried to restrain myself from asking questions, but the pangs in my heart grew. I knew I had to learn to trust Claire and give her her freedom. True love is not possession and control, but equality and respect. But it's one thing to understand it intellectually and another to accept it emotionally. I began to wonder if I had changed enough, if Claire still loved me, and if there was still hope for our marriage. The inner struggle almost tore me apart, and I felt more helpless and uncertain than ever before. I was on the verge of despair when a phone call changed everything. It was late at night when Claire called me in tears, saying that she and David had had a fight and wanted to see me. I immediately drove to her place and took her in my arms. Claire was sobbing uncontrollably, saying in a broken voice how confused she was. "Ethan, I'm so confused. I thought David would give me what I wanted, but I was wrong. What I want has always been with you. But is it possible for us to be together? Can you forgive me?" I stroked Claire's hair and whispered in her ear, "Of course I forgive you, silly. We've both made mistakes, but I believe our love is strong enough to get us through this." We'll be fine, believe me. That night, we embraced each other to sleep, pouring out each other's thoughts and regrets. I know that the road to our marriage is still long, but with this setback and growth, I believe we will walk more stable and farther. The struggles may not go away, but we have learned how to face them together and resolve them with love. Since that late night heart-to-heart, my relationship with Claire has slowly begun to warm up. She moved back into our home, and we began to try to get to know each other as new lovers. I learned to listen, to express myself, and to be tolerant. Life was glowing again, and everything seemed to be going in the right direction. One day, however, Claire suddenly said to me with a heavy heart, "Ethan, I have something to tell you. I've been offered an opportunity to go to the New York office for 6 months. It's important for my career, but I'm worried about our relationship. We've only just begun to mend, and I'm afraid that being out of town will make everything more difficult." The news was like a bolt from the blue for me. Fear gripped my heart in an instant. Could my newly revitalized relationship withstand the test of a long-distance relationship? What if? I didn't dare to think about it anymore. But I also realized that Claire's career was equally important to her, and I had no right to interfere with her choice. "It's your decision. I'll support you," I said in a relaxed voice. "It's just that, have you really thought this through? 6 months is not a short period of time. We both need to be prepared." "I'm also hesitating," Claire sighed. "On the one hand, I don't want to miss this opportunity. But on the other hand, I don't want to risk losing a marriage that I've managed to salvage. Ethan, what do you think I should do?" I was silent for a long time. Sense told me that I should support Claire's career and give her the freedom to realize herself. But my emotions were screaming, "Keep her! You can't be separated again." The struggle inside made me almost suffocate. Eventually, I spoke up, "Honey, go. Our relationship should not be a burden or an obstacle for you. I believe that our future will be better if we grow separately." Claire stared at me, her eyes a little moist. "Do you really think so?" "But I'm afraid that time and distance will change things." "Change isn't scary." I gently wiped the tears from Claire's face. "What's scary is being stagnant. We both need to learn and adapt to the way a relationship should be. Believe me, in 6 months, we'll be better versions of ourselves and have a more mature relationship." Claire nodded and hugged me tightly. I could see her determination in my eyes. At that moment, I suddenly realized that true love is not possession, but fulfillment. Letting go doesn't mean losing, but waiting in a different way. We must eventually learn to spread our wings and fly to a wider sky. The day I saw Claire off, I drove home alone. Passing by the place where we first met, I slowly stopped the car and let the memories flow. The past is still vivid in my mind. We have stumbled along the way, but we have also gained growth and enlightenment. The road of feelings will never be smooth, but I believe that as long as we walk hand in hand, we will eventually arrive at the other side of the happy shore. In the following days, I devoted myself to rebuilding my work and life. I signed up for a counselor's training course, hoping to better understand themselves and others. I recontacted those who have been estranged from friends for a long time, began to learn to open their hearts. I signed up for the company's organization of the field expansion, challenged their own limits. Gradually, I became more confident, more open. Life has become full and meaningful again. Claire and I kept in touch. We share our lives and our feelings. Every time we talked, I felt that we were slowly growing into a better partner. I began to look forward to what would happen when Claire appeared in front of me again in half a year. Time just slipped away. It's been 3 months since Claire left. This day, I received a text message from her. "Ethan, are you okay? I have something to say to you in person. I booked a plane ticket to go back this weekend. Do you have time?" My heart was pounding as I read the text message. Did something happen for Claire to come back so suddenly? All sorts of speculations were swirling in my mind, and I could hardly sit still. After replying to Claire's text message, I started pacing around, my thoughts drifting thousands of miles away. After a few days of this, the weekend finally arrived. On the way to the airport to pick up Claire, I was so nervous that my palms were sweating. When I saw Claire's figure in the arrival hall, my heart almost jumped out of my throat. She seemed to have lost some weight, but also more mature and stable. We looked at each other in silence and hugged each other tightly. Claire was silent on the way home. I tried to find something to talk about, but it was nothing more than small talk. The atmosphere became awkward and heavy, and I had a vague feeling that something was going on. It wasn't until we got home and closed the door that Claire turned around and looked me straight in the eye. There was a strange gleam in her eyes, as if she had some big decision brewing. I held my breath, waiting for her to speak. "Ethan," Claire took a deep breath and said in a single word, "I've been thinking a lot these past 3 months. About me, about you, about our future. There's something I want to say to you." Claire's words echoed in my ears and my heart was beating fast. A million thoughts flashed through my mind. What was she going to say? Was it good news or bad news? Was there any hope for our marriage? Anxiety almost overwhelmed me, and I forced myself to take a deep breath and try to calm down. "Ethan," Claire's voice trembled, "this time away from you has really made me look inside myself. I realized how much I missed you and the time we spent together while I was away from you. I realized that you have become an integral part of my life. We've grown so much in the last 3 months, and I think it's time for us to start over." "What do you mean?" My voice caught in my throat, my heart almost beating out of my chest. "I want to come back to you and start our marriage again." Claire's eyes were a little moist. "During this time, I have seen you change and felt your love. Ethan, I love you, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you in this relationship." Tears blurred my eyes. I hugged Claire tightly. My heart was so excited that it was hard to express. At this moment, our souls were once again close to each other. Past misunderstandings and injuries disappeared, and the road ahead was full of hopes and visions. "I love you too, Claire," I whispered in her ear, "and thank you for being willing to give me another chance. This time, I'll spend my life taking care of our relationship and never let you down again." That night, we talked for a long, long time. We opened our hearts to each other, telling us how we felt and how we had changed during this period of time. We agreed to relearn how to love each other and how to run a marriage. After this separation, we both realized that relationships need to be cared for with all our hearts, and we need to keep learning and growing. In the days that followed, we began to readjust to each other's lives. I learned to balance work and family, to listen and express myself, and Claire learned to open up and face her inner needs. We began to explore the joys of life together and plan for the future. Life became bright and full again. 3 months later, Claire's New York program ended and she was officially back with me. To celebrate our fresh start, I planned an elaborate honeymoon. We traveled to Banff National Park in Canada, where we took picturesque walks and admired the beauty of nature. Against the backdrop of the lakes and mountains, we made a new vow. No matter how hard life gets, we will walk hand in hand and protect each other with love. When we got home, we started to try a new way of life. We moved to a bigger house and started planning for our future family. We enrolled in a couples growth workshop to learn how to run a better marriage. We also started to try new hobbies, learning to cook together and volunteering in the community. Life became more colorful and our relationship continued to grow. A year has passed. On this day, the sun was shining brightly. Claire and I walked hand in hand in the park. We were talking about the past and lamenting the ups and downs of the journey. Yes, we have made mistakes, we have lost our way, but in the end, we found each other and the most precious treasure in our lives. "Ethan, do you think we'll have any more difficulties in the days ahead?" Claire leaned gently against my shoulder. "There are bound to be difficulties, my dear." I smiled. "But as long as we're together, there's nothing we can't face. Remember, no matter what happens, I'll be there for you. The sun is shining on us, lighting up the road ahead. I know that as long as there is love, we can overcome all difficulties and obstacles and welcome every surprise in life." Hand in hand, we continue to walk forward toward the future full of hope. This is not an ending, but a new beginning. Our story has just begun. Dear friends, today I would like to share with you the story of my wife Claire and me. We were once at a low point in our marriage and almost gave up on our relationship. But after all the misunderstandings and hurts, we finally chose to face the problems, understand each other, and start afresh. This experience has taught me that marriage is never easy. It requires effort and continuous learning and growth. When we encounter difficulties, instead of avoiding or blaming, we should communicate more, be more tolerant, and learn to think differently. Only by opening our hearts and facing the problems can we find a good solution to resolve the conflicts. I also realized that true love is not about possession and control, but about fulfillment and protection. Sometimes, giving each other some free space can make the relationship more resilient. On the road of chasing dreams, we should learn to be each other's support and backing, not a stumbling block. If you are facing a difficult situation in your marriage, I hope our story can give you some inspiration and encouragement. Please believe that as long as you still have love, there is no difficulty that cannot be overcome. Be brave to communicate, to change, to manage your relationship. Maybe the process will be a little painful, but I promise it will be worth it. Love is not a momentary passion, but a lifelong practice. May you all find your own happiness and have a mature and touching relationship. Remember, we are all on the road of love, together. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's story. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you have a story to share about your own or someone else's experience, please feel free to contact me. Take care.